Okay, welcome, Ramey, to the Vinny and Ramey show. The first version of it, the first episode of it, as raw and as unfiltered, unedited, and unprofessional as we can possibly make it, because I'm not sure there's another way that I know how to do it than that. So let's sort of keep it there. And wishing you a happy Giving Tuesday. Let's say that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. So I thought that for today, um, we could just talk about Giving Tuesday. Before that, I'll actually ask you to introduce yourself since I know you, but anyone who, for whatever God knows reasons, they might actually watch this or listen to it, doesn't know you, that they could actually learn a little bit about you, then maybe trust some of the answers that you share once we start this conversation. So start with that. Question number one is, who is Ramy Rubin? And maybe in a way that is understandable for a fifth grader.
Sure. So I'm the director of marketing for CauseMatch, which is a fundraising platform for nonprofits.
I know it well.
I believe you do. So my professional life is living and breathing fundraising and trying to understand what makes how to make it a little bit easier for fundraisers to fundraise. But the truth is that even before I was doing this professionally, uh, I was always interested in it because even in my prior professional life to CauseMatch, I always danced around fundraising and was always involved in nonprofit organizations. And even when my direct job responsibilities didn't directly dovetail with this subject, I always loved understanding the psychology of why people give. That to me is like just a fascinating thing that we humans just give away this hard earned money. We're frugal in so many other areas of life and we look for the best sales and deals and we don't spend. But when it comes to giving, we give. The more that fundraisers can understand why and tap into that, I think the more successful that they'll be. So that's always been something that's interested me, and that really, I think, goes along nicely with Giving Tuesday and this amazing global trend that's happening, where so much money is transferred from individuals and corporations to nonprofits, and just sort of unpacking that, understanding why. That's who I am professionally and
Do you?
personally.
I'm so curious. Like, it's definitely the cause of like a different conversation, a different episode potentially. Is just the psychology of giving and why people give. Like, just in a nutshell, on that, is it nature? Is it nurture? Like, do you think people naturally give and share? Is something that their parents teach them and they learn in school? Like, especially, and the money is like another level of that, maybe, or is a different version of it. But I'm like, I think about this question a lot, and we both come from the same community, basically, where giving is built into the DNA of our community, whether that's financial giving or other kinds of giving. But I'm generally curious in the short moment here, like how you think about that subject or what you know about that subject.
So I think I can sort of limit my answer to what I would call like the American or American and Canadian cultures, right? So I think that there's no community within the US and Canada that I know of that doesn't give. So yes, some communities give more than others. As you said, you and I come from communities of givers, and I think that's definitely true, and that definitely is the nurture part of it. But I think in short, people give because it feels good. It feels good to give. It's why people are kind in general. I think it sort of speaks to that kindness factor, but giving feels good, and that again ties into what fundraisers can learn from that is the more that we can make people feel good about their gifts, the more they're going to give. It's something we naturally do to ourselves, make ourselves feel good about the kindnesses that we do and the donations that we donate to organizations, but it certainly can be brought out from a fundraiser. It certainly can be brought out from a beneficiary.
Okay, so not related question.
Yeah.
What's going on your wall right there behind you, above your left shoulder? Like, did you like bang into the wall? Is it like painting issues? Is your chair? Is it a door thing? Like, what's going on there?
I think it's a chair thing. I think it's because I
Okay.
swivel and my chair bangs up against it. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there.
I just know I never noticed it before. We've done like hundreds of these Zooms together, and maybe usually like blurred out, but at least
I angle the camera. I'm better about angling the camera.
maybe the one time you're not blurred in the background, I noticed like this thing happening on your wall, and I'm glad it's not mold.
Yeah, it's not bold. And if you could shift the camera angle and you could see everything that's
Of
not on screen right now,
course.
this would look amazing, right? This would be like the Mona Lisa over here. What's happening on
Yeah.
this side of the room is
The
much
whole
worse.
frame of the zoom on these kinds of things, or the screen on the video. There's someone we both know actually who has a very specific spot where he records all of his videos in front of a bookcase, and just to the right and just to the left of the bookcase is a disaster zone. But in the space of the bookcase, everything is perfect, and it looks like the greatest setup in the history of Zoom backgrounds. So, okay, I get it. No, so you're saying then Brooklyn, where I grew up, and Pittsburgh, where you grew up, are the same as Quebec City, California, within gradations.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are communities that highlight it and make it a focal point, and that is that external, that is the nurture factor. It absolutely can be nurtured. So I think there, whether you call it gradations or maybe there are big differences between different communities, communities that really highlight it and focus it and spotlight it and call out big philanthropists are definitely going to generate more philanthropy. But I think on the other end of the spectrum, it's not all the way at zero, that even communities that don't do that, you still see people give because they care about certain causes or someone they love asked them to, or they feel that it's important. They want to make a difference in the world. Whatever sort of reason it is, I sort of all boils up to it
Right.
feels good. It feels good.
Right. I see it. I also feel that more acutely when it's a real need moment. Right. And whether that's an economic need moment where the economy's bad, or, so it's a tragedy, something strikes, or whatever it is, you see all kinds of people come out of the work in the space of giving. It almost feels like that's their first reaction is, how do I give? What can I do? How can I help? And that seems to cut across community so that people everywhere effectively fit into that space. I remember, different kinds of moments, 9/11 as an example, people lining up to donate blood in New York City at the time. Thousands and thousands of people were lining up. That was what they thought they could do. Economic crisis, 2008, 2009. How can I support someone? Can I get them a job? Can I, just give them some money? Even from the government in that space, it really was a big thing. All kinds of situations like that, where in maybe in typical situations when someone's asking for donations, they're not giving. When push comes to shove and it's a need moment, a real urgent need moment, they step forward and they step into that space where, and maybe not realize that you should be doing more of that or less of that, whatever, but um, that happens in that space. So then I don't know if that was nurtured into them as a kid, or that's the nature of the beast as a human, that they sort of opt into that in those moments. But I definitely hear what you're saying.
Yeah, the clearest examples I have of this are I spent over 10 years at the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, and most of the fundraising that they do are for local needs. And if there are
Right.
outside of the local needs, they're very specific about what they raise money for and what they give it out to. But I remember I was there over those 10, 11 years that I was there. I was there for several natural disasters, and every time there was a natural disaster, the one that I remember most clearly was the hurricane flooding in Houston.
Okay.
And so we're in Pittsburgh, and there's this terrible natural disaster that happens, thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away, whatever it is. And they opened up a special fund for disaster relief. Now they did very little actual fundraising around it, but they opened up this mailbox. They opened up this
Right.
inbox that allowed for donations, and money came pouring in. And I remember thinking about it, that if you're sitting in Pittsburgh and this terrible thing is happening to you, and you're watching it on the news, this terrible thing is happening, not to you, but this terrible thing is happening and you're watching it on the news. The way that I thought about it was there's probably a feeling of helplessness. You want to help, you're not on the ground, it's
Right.
not happening to you, but you can easily imagine a natural disaster happening to you. These communities look just like the communities we are in. So without even needing to fundraise, people in Pittsburgh are opening up their hearts and wallets and giving to this natural disaster in Houston for relief. And I think it's to alleviate that feeling of helplessness. I know I need to do something, so I'm going to do something, and this is the way that I know how to do it.
Right. And we're going to get to Giving Tuesday in just a second, but I think this is a good setup for it. Um, and it's sort of I won't say the easiest thing for someone to do, but it's the thing that most people can do, is this, right? They're not experts in, I don't know, delivery of goods or moving goods or even who to call, but they can give $1, give $5, give $10, and that maybe it solves the anxiety of the helplessness that you describe, but it also does something that they can actually do, and it's and within their wheelhouse of possibilities. You're not asking them to do something they simply can't do that they're going to get boxed out of. I guess that it's almost like, I won't call it the least common denominator, but it's sort of like the lowest hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, that gets to what you're looking to do, which is to give something.
Absolutely. It's a really, when you boil it down the way that you're saying this, and I never thought of it like this, but it's a really simple call to action, right? This is what you need to do. And then what the variable, I guess, would be the amount. And the amount is dependent on
Right. Wealth.
wealth. And I had an old mentor who said, "Don't give until it hurts, give until it feels good." Right. So for every person, that's going to vary, and to someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, a $10 gift or a $50 gift is a tremendous sacrifice, and that probably feels awesome for that person to say, "This was part of my very small disposable income that I had set aside. It was part of my budget, but instead of going out to dinner, I'm going to give it to someone who really needs it." That probably feels awesome.
Right. It makes me wonder if, based just a little quote you just had from that mentor of yours, like if giving only starts to count when it actually starts to hurt. Because until that point, like you gave, but like, okay, you checked the box and you did something. But when it starts to feel like, oof, now I'm stretching a little bit, and then you're asking me to do something I don't want to do or I can't do right. I really don't think I can do right now. And then like it only starts. It reminds me of the famous quote from Muhammad Ali is, how many sit-ups do you do? He said, I only start counting them when they start hurting, right? So it feels like a little bit that same vibe that the person comes to your door, you give them a few dollars. It's like you check, but did you do anything? When they ask you for real money, and like it's really like dipping into your pockets deeper and stretching, then maybe it's different. But okay, but I get it. Okay, good. Super, super interesting start to this little fact, just to mention it here because you know it, but no one else who might, in theory, again, for some reason, listen or watch this. I used to work at the company called Cosmatch where Rami is employed. We used to work together there. That's where we met. The genesis of this silly idea was there, but it took us how many years to actually try to do this? Oh, at least four. I think probably the first time we talked about it was 4 years ago, right? So good that we're doing it. Me in a different place, you still there, which is good, holding down the fort. So let's talk about Giving Tuesday. When we started, I wished you a happy Giving Tuesday. I think I wished you that yesterday in advance. Happy Giving Tuesday Eve. Like, it's a super interesting day. I don't know how else to describe it. On one level, it's very inspiring. On another level, I think it sets certain people off. And on the third level, like like I don't even know how to think about it or what to think about it. Especially when I ask you the final question, which is, have you ever given to a Giving Tuesday?
I do not know that I've ever given to a Giving Tuesday campaign.
Right. Which is, I didn't mean to ask you that to put you on the spot, although it does put you on the spot, but it does
But
raise a super interesting part of this conversation around the day itself and the impact of the day itself and how much it actually drives you to give. Because you and I both know that the amount of money that changes hands during the course of Giving Tuesday campaigns, and I would say it's Giving Tuesday expanded prior to Giving Tuesday, maybe even the weekend before, or a couple of days before, a couple of days after, where people are like extending the clock, that it's billions of dollars. And in terms of the volunteering that goes on, I think it's in the millions of hours of volunteering that goes on this day. So it has sort of morphed on some degree. At the same time, when I ask people, have you ever given to a Giving Tuesday campaign? I get that look a lot, which is, you know, I don't know. And I haven't done this research on it to think that it's communal or specific in any way, but it is an open question to me that raises the next question, which is what's the value of the day if it actually doesn't give you to give? So take it away. Now that I've embarrassed you on the air.
no, I'm an open book. I think that Giving Tuesday has evolved. And if you can, the idea of it is quite nice and quite brilliant in a lot of
Yes.
ways. That like on so many levels, right? So we have Black Friday. You know, people are spending money like crazy. We're coming off of the heels of Thanksgiving, where people are appreciating blessings in their life. They're surrounded by family, hopefully eating some good food. And then there's Cyber Monday was created. People are spending more money, and then all of a sudden, there was an idea to like put some good into the world and extend this sort of week long holiday festivities, and do it for
Right.
a day of giving, which is really nice. And the other reason why it's quite brilliant is just where it's situated in terms of the calendar, where we're gearing up right now toward by far the busiest time of year for fundraisers, where depending on what statistic you're looking at, you can roughly say that about 30% of donations in general are going to fly in for the month of December. So the fact that it's kicking in right now
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I think that where it started and where we are now are not the same places.
So
So
where are
it's
we now based on what you just described? Because the way you described the start, if you're there, if you're a cynic, and a little bit I'm a cynic, it was like it's so gluttonous over these days between the food and the spending. My guilty conscience says I got to give a little bit of charity on the back end of that and feel like I did a little bit of good, which justifies me buying stuff I don't need on websites I've never heard of for amounts of money that I don't have. So like I wonder if that was the initial impetus. I don't know. I hope it was more positive than that because that was a pretty negative way to describe it. But where did it start? At least in your understanding of it, and then where is it now? Let's say that.
Well, the key shift of focus to me is it went from being on the individual, where even if you take that cynical look that you just presented, at least it's on the individual, it's on the donor, right?
Yeah.
Like you just went through this gluttonous week. Now do something good. That's great. But now Giving Tuesday has become very, I don't know what the right word is, institutional. It's
Formal.
become the focus, the formal. It's become the focus is on the organization, and because of that, it's gone on to sort of like a checklist of things that organizations need to do
Yeah.
as they hit, quarter four, and they're looking at those last 3 months. Okay, we gotta send something out on Giving Tuesday. We gotta run that Giving Tuesday campaign. Why? Because it's on our checklist. It was on our checklist last year, so it's going to be on our checklist this year. I think it's become much more of something that organizations feel that they have to do, and if they are not doing it, then they feel like they're leaving money on the table, which I'm not sure is entirely true. I think the one exception to this, the one place where I think it can pay real dividends is when organizations are coupled with corporate sponsors. I think that once you have some sort of matching component from a corporate sponsor, which I've seen a lot of Giving Tuesday campaigns incorporate, I think that's a different story. If you have some corporate matcher that's willing to match donations that come in on a specific day, you can generate a lot of good, of philanthropy. But in terms of if as an isolated fundraising campaign, it really doesn't do much for me, and I don't think it does much for individuals because it feels now like a very manufactured reason to give, and that is a hard thing to sell. Donors don't really buy those manufactured reasons to give. You got to give someone a real reason to give beyond because it's Giving Tuesday.
There's so many questions that came out of that answer. No, because you touched on a lot of different aspects of this thing. Like for me, Giving Tuesday has turned into more of a celebration of the people who run organizations. And if that was the day it became, I think that would be actually on some level better.
Amazing. Great. Let's do that.
And the truth is, I try every year to do it, post on LinkedIn or something like that, a post celebrating the people who run these organizations, start these organizations, fund these organizations, support these organizations. It's independent of the beneficiaries of these organizations and the good that's being done. Like these are people who are in many cases operating in the background and get nothing. They certainly don't get paid enough for it, but do amazing work, often in spaces and in places that no one ever heard of, and they don't get celebrated nearly enough or appreciated. Like I don't know how much you can give them, but at least you can appreciate them and be gracious and have a level of gratitude around them. And then maybe you can do something more. Like I was at an event last night, and one of the prize recipients at this event was a woman who started an organization in Israel for the girlfriends and boyfriends of people who were killed um, as a result of war or terrorist activity. It's like a, I never thought of it before, right? So, and the way she explained it in the video was, if you're a spouse of that person, the state's going to take care of you. There's going to be resources. People are going to rally around you, right? Because you're the spouse or you're the child of someone like that. But if you're quote unquote just a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you are beyond the pale of what the government views or organizations view as next of kin. You're not next of kin, right? And so they're excluded from all that service. So she created an organization for this very small group of people, like really small group of people that she's helped over the course of decades. And I have to tell you that in the room, that person's award, that person, I think surprisingly got the most sort of emotional response from the audience. And I think she mostly operated for 30 in the dark. Like nobody was sort of appreciating the good that she was really bringing to these people in a very complicated and complex moment and situation. And so celebrating her, I thought was amazing, right? So we don't celebrate those people nearly enough. So my thought was like, if Giving Tuesday becomes the day we celebrate these people, like, our version of quote unquote Veterans Day for the people who run nonprofits, as opposed to just the gifts and the giving, that would be a good flip of where it started. Because of what you just said, I think is part of that, which is if it feels super institutionalized and formal as a day of giving, then I might not be interested in giving, one. And two, from the organizational standpoint, if it doesn't work for you, and this is one of the things I was going to ask you, it doesn't work for you timing wise, so then, like, what is it? Like, how does it work for you as a day if, let's say, you're really gearing up for a, Christmas week or end of calendar week thing, or your big time of the year, if you're in the Jewish communities, the high holidays, that's where you're going to get like 80% of your money, let's say. So then, random day Tuesday in December for you is like not a day. So like, what do you do with it if it's so formal and institutionalized? You can't pick it up and drop it in another part of the calendar and say, okay, we're going to do Giving Tuesday in July, the same way that Amazon Prime Day just sort of popped in and became a thing. So like, I wonder about it from that standpoint is, okay, if it doesn't drive me to actually give, it's a little bit institutional for me in some way. It's shifted, as you said, from the individual to the organization. Now they have to do something about it. So then, like, if you're coaching an organization, what are you telling them to think about and do for Giving Tuesday, one year to the next? And how does it maybe fit into what it is you're trying to do overall? Long.
Yeah, but the story you told is really unbelievable. I mean, I think it's not hard for me to understand why this founder of this organization elicited so much emotion from people, because she identified a real need. And once that need is explained to me, someone who has no connection, was not something on my radar, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. These are like the forgotten victims
Yes.
of. So I think there's a lot of merit to taking the day and flipping it, and whether that is, I mean, I think you and I have a friend who I believe has even shared the idea of turning it into something like Gratitude Tuesday,
Yeah, I
something
tell
like
people
that.
that all the time.
So whether that gratitude is toward the people running the organizations, or whether it's geared toward the donors themselves, like I think there's so much to be done with this, with Giving Tuesday. It's not something that I would sit here and tell you like it's a terrible idea, we should just scrap it and like forget it. I think there's a lot here, and I think that if organizations are able to use it to their advantage, to look at it. Again, what you said made so much sense to me that I never really thought of it in that context, is to zoom out a little bit and look at Giving Tuesday in terms of what your calendar looks like, what
Yeah.
your specific organizational calendar
For a
looks like.
writer, for you to get that word wrong is amazing. But I'm going to, okay, anyway.
Writer, not a speaker.
Specific. Wow.
For you to look at and say, okay, we have the high holidays here, and we know that end of year giving is going to be intense here, and in the middle we have this day. Let's do something with it, because people are expecting something. Not necessarily. Let me take that back. No one is expecting something from your organization. A donor does not wake up, check his
Correct.
inbox, and say, is this organization going to send me a Giving Tuesday email today? It does not work like that. But in general, I think people are now accustomed and prepared to see Giving Tuesday material. So how can we flip that on its head and even cut through some of the noise by being different, right? Because it's if you go up against all of the other organizations that are out there with a standard Giving Tuesday
Right.
message, yeah, it's very hard to win. It's very hard to cut through all that noise and be louder. But the suggestion that you just gave in terms of spotlighting people within the organization or spotlighting donors themselves is a fantastic way to rise above the fray and get noticed. I love it.
Yeah, my thing has always been, along with that person who we know, who I don't think is a fan of Giving Tuesday. I think it's an understatement to say that he's not a fan of the day. But I had this thing in a webinar I gave a couple of years ago called Giving Thanks Tuesday, and
Giving Thanks Tuesday. I like
that
that.
was the term, was to use it as a day that best suits you to give thanks to people instead of asking them for money, to give them something instead. So to give them thanks for being a supporter, being a volunteer. You could extend it into like a whole week if you're looking at specific people on your team, and there's an opportunity to, because it's wrapped around Thanksgiving, to have gratitude around your employees and your teammates and your founders and your donors and your board members and all this other stuff, right? It becomes a different kind of PR kind of communication moment. That was always one way I always liked to talk about it. The other thing I used to do was, because it was a Giving Thanks Tuesday as opposed to asking people for money, I tried to always make the board, and they didn't do it, but it was conceptually a good idea. For a way for them to get involved with donors more was, they don't have to ask them for anything. They just have to give them thanks for having done something already. And so it was a way to try to garner like more participation from people who, typically speaking, would rather be left alone, who are board members in my organization or places where I work, and get them to lean in. Because, as you said, December is coming, or December is here, and we're going to be doing a lot, and I really need you. And this is the least I can ask of you to do, is just to say thanks to a few people in an email and a text message, not even in a phone call. God forbid, heaven forbid, they'd have to call somebody, but just do that little bit, even somebody you don't know, just sort of reach out that way. Like, that's always sort of like, that was one of the things I'm going to ask you. Like, I would ask you from a storytelling standpoint, but from a strategic standpoint, okay, it's a day on the calendar, like a lot of other days are on the calendar. So if you're in a religious community, you have different holidays on your calendar, and you're maybe strategically planning based on that. If you're even not, just you have a fundraising calendar, so you know when your gala event is, and you know when your online campaign is, and you know where X and Y and Z is, and these are the days you're going to avoid, whatever. So Giving Tuesday is another one of those days on your calendar that's Xed or marked or squared or boxed, whatever. And now it's like, what are we going to do with it as a strategic play for us as an organization, more than the way that the Giving Tuesday people want? And I would give them a lot of credit, honestly, just based on your initial comment. The Giving Tuesday people have been, I mean, they own it on some level, but they've been very sort of hands off as to how you can and should use the day. And I think that's to their credit, that they've given organizations space to be super creative, super open, and different about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it each and every year. And so they benefit simply by the fact that you hashtag Giving Tuesday every time, and then they can use it as a data point. But they haven't like owned it in a forced way that makes it only about money. So if you didn't do money, you don't count. No. If you did volunteering, you count. If you did gratitude, you count. If you did something else, you launched your end of year Giving Tuesday, you count. All that they can get some level of soft credit for, let's say, or even actual hard credit for, because they established the anchor in the calendar at this time of the year. Fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely fair. What you said brings to mind, before in your earlier comment and looking at where Giving Tuesday falls out in the calendar landscape between, fall high holidays and end of year giving, we zoomed out. But the other, what you just did now in your comment is you zoomed out even further by making these suggestions about board members forming relationships with donors or something like that. And
Yeah.
you're now kind of, without saying it, we're saying that fundraising isn't a short-term game. Fundraising isn't about the short game and that sort of getting that donation right now, which is what Giving Tuesday has become, about getting that donation right now. And what you're suggesting, between board members forming relationships, between offering some gratitude, between you're zooming out and saying this is about the long-term relationship that organizations are going to have with their donors, which sort of kind of, to bring it all full circle, brings me back to what I love about fundraising, which is how can we make donors feel awesome? And asking them for money just to ask them for money doesn't make donors feel awesome. But thanking them and having someone text them or send them an
Right.
email that say, hey, I see you. I see that you've been a donor to this organization for 3 years. Awesome. Thank you. That makes donors feel awesome. That makes donors feel awesome. So I think that there are absolutely ways that you can use, organizations can use Giving Tuesday to actually very much deepen their fundraising efforts. Those fruits of that labor just won't happen on Giving Tuesday itself. It'll happen down the road, and something that fundraisers have to trust is going to happen.
Right. I totally hear that. I'm putting it up on the screen. How can we make donors feel awesome?
Love it.
Super good question. So let me ask you then, just inside your wheelhouse on storytelling and writing. So I'll give you an organization. It's a medium-sized organization. Giving Tuesday for them has been effective, let's say financially year over year. But their leadership has decided that they really want to zoom. They realized that by doing Giving Tuesday as a fundraiser, they're leaving money on the table because end of year giving is down, right? So they're looking at the whole swath of, let's say, 5 weeks from the end of November to the end of December. And knowing the data that you just sort of, I think, freely just sort of threw out at the beginning in terms of the amount of giving that goes on in December, which I think a lot of people in our world know, but I don't know that everybody does. So this leadership situation, they decided we want to still use Giving Tuesday, but we wanted to spur towards the end of the calendar year, 29th, 30th, 31st of December. They're coming to you from a strategic storytelling writing standpoint. How do you do that?
I can think of a couple things. One is in the storytelling realm. The other is more of a marketing play.
Fine,
But
go.
I think in the storytelling realm, there's definitely an advantage to getting out there first in terms of your end of year message. So if
Okay.
you're able to couple your Giving Tuesday message with an end of year giving message to say, this is your end of year gift. You're about to get inundated with end of year giving requests. This is coming from us right now. Make your end of year giving gift today. And just so donors understand that when they give their gift on Giving Tuesday, that is recognized as their end of year giving. Like I think there is a way to tie those messages in. Definitely goes without saying. There is a arc to making that fundraising ask in a compelling way. You want to establish a need. You don't want them to give because it's Giving Tuesday or because it's December 1st is coming up. You want them to give because there's an authentic need. And you want to clearly explain to them how their donation is going
Let
to
me interrupt you.
solve that
I'm
need.
going to interrupt you
Please,
there for a second.
please.
Like, is there a negative side to having them give because it's Giving Tuesday? What's the downside on that?
The only downside is, according to your example, is the organization felt like they were leaving money on the table because they used up their ask too early. And they couldn't go to their donors then 3 weeks later to say, okay, now the tax year is officially ending. Get your tax deductible end of year gifts in now. So if you need to fold those messages in, I think you absolutely can.
Even though it's like a distance of 30 days between, does that work? I'm honestly, like on a calendar, does that work that you can say like, I know it's December 1st, but this is going to count for end of year.
So it sort of ties into the second answer I wanted to give, which is the marketing play. And the reason it ties in there is because you have to know who you're talking to. You have to know who you're talking to.
Fine.
If you are sending your message to someone who's historically given you $1,000 every year, and on Giving Tuesday they give you $100, that there is cause for concern there, right? Because that can mean one of two things. It can either mean that gift is going to be on top of or a contribution to the general $1,000 gift that person is going to give. Or the fear is that person's being inundated with requests. You caught them in a bad moment. Person's giving $100 and is cutting his or her gift by $900.
Yeah.
So if if you want to alleviate that concern. So first of all, you can tie in the message to say, Mr. and Mrs. Donor, $1,000 donor, this is your end of year request right here, so they understand and there's clarity. But you might also want to segment that person out of your Giving Tuesday ask, and you might want to say, okay, there is a person here who gives historically, and this person historically gives, December 28th, right as the clock's about to strike midnight. So we don't want this person getting our Giving Tuesday ask. Would make a lot of sense to me. I think that you can think about it in lots of different ways. You can send your Giving Tuesday message to people that are the lower end of givers, where there is less risk. If you lose an $18 gift that you've historically gotten, or a $20 gift that you've historically gotten, that hurts. I'm not going to say that doesn't hurt. Losing every donor hurts, but stakes aren't nearly as high as someone who's been giving 4 digits over the course of years. I think segmenting your donors and understanding who should get what message makes a lot more sense in this case.
I get that. So you were trying to benefit the day, use of the day, but not at the expense of your organization's overall reach and impact and fundraising. And so you're going to target a specific subset of your audience that way, and maybe only in a way that they're going to get it, meaning like you're not going to do like play that out for me. So let's say you decide we're going to do under $50 is going to be our audience for Giving Tuesday. And so we're going to look historically back over the last 3-5 years of people who gave $50 total during the course of the year, whatever. And that's our audience. Are you only going to go email on that? Again, this is like a totally different aspect of this conversation. It's very practical, which is, are you going to go only email in that space because you don't want those bigger donors to see it? Are you going to avoid like social media for Giving Tuesday other than to acknowledge the day because you don't want to make the mistake of hitting up a person who you're saving, quote unquote, for the end of the count? Like, how do you, from a marketing, storytelling, outreach standpoint, how do you do that?
I think it's way too hard to be successful at this if you're also trying to not be successful at it. I can't ever encourage an organization to go out and promote Giving Tuesday, but don't promote it all the way, lest someone sees it and gives a smaller amount than he or she otherwise would. It's hard enough to get attention in this world that if you're actively trying to also at the same time not get attention, I think it's a recipe for disaster, especially for organizations that are typically understaffed, under-resourced. There's not as much sophistication to be able to have that highly targeted visibility that only certain people see this campaign and other people don't. So to me, I have a strong reaction to that. If you're going to market Giving Tuesday, yes, you can work on email and only send direct emails to people that are in that segment. But I would not discourage organizations from posting it on social media just because they're nervous that a major donor is going to see it and quote unquote waste the gift on Giving Tuesday.
Right. So I'm less concerned that some sort of big giver is going to see it on Facebook or Instagram or they're not on TikTok. Not likely. The big givers are not on TikTok. I mean, at least not at the moment.
Not yet.
At least unless they're TikTokers themselves or like really young influencers who've made a lot of money. But I worried less about the biggest end of my list going that way because there's a reason they're the biggest end of my list as givers, and that's not how they give typically. And they're not looking for a deal, quote unquote, by getting away with a $50 gift most of the time. But there's that middle ground, which I worry about a little bit. But I definitely hear what you're saying. Like I used to, when I was at the companies to do the campaigns, so I had this rule called inform without asking, where if I was segmenting, and I would tell this to everybody, if I'm segmenting a list for a specific ask, and I don't want to ask that next level of participants, I'm going to send them a different email or a different correspondence, communication, whatever it is, that says, I want to let you know that we're doing a campaign for a certain population of our audience, however you want to term that. We love you. We adore you. We appreciate you. I just want you to know about it. I'm not asking you for it. And the reason was I didn't want them to give then. One, that was part of the thinking, but also I wanted to know that they were appreciated for where they are and who they are as a supporter of my organization or whatever client I was working with. so that when that came where they found out about it, because they're always going to find out about it through the grapevine, which is something you're sort of hinting at, then they're going to be like, what about me? Like, do you not value me? That they suddenly fall into this like concern about how they're viewed and how people think about them when they shouldn't be. But you want to be sort of preemptive in that moment with them, I think, and informing them without asking them covers like a lot of those bases for the plus X dollar giver that you have in your organization. And I always found that it worked. I found that it worked two ways. One, they most often didn't give, and two, when you actually did ask them, they actually gave more, because you had respected them in a very, very meaningful way and direct. It's excluding them from the list, segmenting them out is like one side of that, right? The other side of that is I did that, but I want you to know about that I did that, and I want you to know why I did that, and secretly, I want you to know those things so that when I do ask you, you're going to give me more money.
To say it a different way, you have turned this problem and you have made donors feel awesome. You have made this donor feel awesome by he or she now feels like they're in this.
There it is again. There it is again.
There it is again. That's what I'm saying. They're feeling like they're in this exclusive club. And you're informing them. They're on the inside. They have this inside knowledge. They know what's happening inside the organization, so that when it comes time for that ask, they're going to be primed to give.
We're moving into a space with how to make donors feel awesome, where it's almost a drinking game. You've said it like 5 times during the course of a 40-minute conversation. And admittedly, if someone had to listen to this over whiskey, it's probably more interesting and better or some cocktail or whatever that is. But yeah, but I feel like if we do this again, or however many times we do this, that term's going to come up a lot from you, which is fine. But maybe that the tagline where mine says chief of something, yours says how to make people feel awesome. Like I'm the chief of making people feel awesome, which is probably a great way to sell being a copywriter, right? That's such a, like, what do you do? I make people feel awesome. Wow. Like, how do you do that? How can I do that? Like, can you teach me how to make people feel awesome? Like, is that a thing? A teachable skill? There's the marketing of copywriting and storytelling in a way that's unique to what we're doing here. But I definitely get it. Like, I mean, today so far, I haven't really checked my inbox just yet so far today, in terms of having seen the numbers of organizations. I mean, I know a couple of organizations because I'm working with them right now, and today is part of their launch process. So one of them specifically is targeting it as a day as part of a launch. One of them is just using it as a day to ask, even though they're not specifically mentioning Giving Tuesday in their language for whatever reason. But I don't know that I've seen yet so many pop up in my world. I don't honestly subscribe to newsletters for the sake of getting their fundraising. I know you do on some level because you're a little bit masochist in that way. I think you could say you like to see what they're writing. I don't like to be asked for more money. I just feel like there's a limit. I mean, there is a limit, but the reality of my inbox is not just as a limit. It's it's frustrating, or it's like if we did the homework and we looked at 50 of them, we would see the flaws in probably all of them. But yeah, I just feel like I haven't seen yet the inundation of it at the moment. How about you?
I've seen a lot. Haven't seen any that have. It feels. I haven't seen anything so different from previous years yet. It just seems to be a lot more of the same.
Because it worked.
That I don't know, but I guess that's the other thing that I should qualify everything that I said with. If it's working for an organization, then I'm certainly not going to tell them to stop doing it either. So I'm not on the inside of all these organizations. If they're generating a lot of money from Giving Tuesday, good on you. Keep doing it, and also please let me know. I'd be just genuinely curious. But there's a lot of statistics around it now, so I'm sure we'll see the numbers over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I would love if Giving Tuesday as an entity I know they do a lot of data stuff afterward as a follow up, but there's no place to see it live. No singular place. There's no dashboard that shows 100 campaigns going on for Giving Tuesday, which I think would be unbelievable, right? If you could see the screen in front of you, this big screen corner, like we used to do with, with the umbrella campaigns, and you got to see all of them in front of you at the same time. That, to me, it was very inspiring to see 20 organizations going at the same time, and you could see the progress bar for every single one of them as they're, and at the top, the global, like, can you imagine a page that shows you $1 billion,
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
right? That would be unbelievable, right? Um, I'm sure it's doable, but I haven't seen, if a company can do it, then an entity can do it. They just have to figure out how to
Yeah,
connect the
sure.
dots.
But it also probably goes back to what you were saying, that if Giving Tuesday is going to let organizations have pretty much total creative control over their campaigns, then that's what they're giving up. That's what Giving Tuesday is giving up, that central resource,
Yes.
that central hub.
Yeah, but I'm thinking outside the box with you, technologically speaking. Like, you could do multiple things. You could have a tab that shows dollars. You could have that shows volunteer hours, um, and engagements, social media engagements on Giving Tuesday on your
Sure.
platforms, and just those three, right, would show you the massive size and reach of what it is that you did that day in real time. Whereas right now it's fairly diffuse. So, like, I don't see it, and I'm professionally involved in it. You are too, and you don't get to see the landscape of it unless the company is at Cosmich is doing a lot. Like, you're not going to see so many at the same time, and that to me is like on some level is a loss of the inspiration, the excitement around a
Yeah.
potential day like this, is to do that kind of a dashboard kind of thing that people can pop into. I mean, you can do engagement on that site itself, just for itself, to see. But there's a lot of, anyway. Okay.
We got to talk to the Giving Tuesday people.
Yeah, we also have to wrap it up right there, Rabies. For today, I don't know if you want to call it episode 1, episode 0. That was a great start. I thank you for your time today. Happy Giving Tuesday to you. And no one else appreciates you today than let you know that I appreciate you and the work that you've done over the years for the many organizations and the millions upon millions of dollars in donations that you have helped raise and the impact you have created around the world.
Vinny, the feelings are mutual, my friend.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.